As more Israeli hostages come home, the details of their hell on earth captivity under Hamas are beginning to emerge. This conversation will be hard to hear, but let's bring in Nate Buzolic, arguably the most influential next gen pro Israel voice in the world. Nate, it's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, Raj. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Let me read you a couple lines from the Jerusalem Post. This is just disturbing, but it's a conversation we need to have. It said,
Hmm.
newly released Israeli hostages have revealed the brutal conditions they endured in Hamas captivity, severe malnutrition, psychological torment, and forced confinement in cages. So, Nate, I know you are maybe more than anyone else I know intimately involved in what Hamas has done since October 7th. And now, obviously, these hostages being released. You talk to a lot of people. What's your initial thought on this report?
Yeah, my initial thought, and one thing I think is alarming and that everyone should be aware of is the parade and the extravaganza that Hamas chose and elected to put on off the back of a falsely proclaimed genocide. It seems like everything changed once the ceasefire was enacted. All the uniforms came out freshly pressed, no dust. The masks came back on. I put up an Instagram post this morning, and usually we want people to take their masks off to see who they truly are. But what we're actually seeing from Hamas is when their masks go back on, we see their true face, which is jihadist, radical, Islamist ideologies that are celebrating this as a victory. Now, these parades are sickening to watch because they don't truly reflect what these hostages have endured and been through. Some of the reports that are coming out talk about these Israelis being in tunnels for up to 430 plus days, not seeing light for the entire time, being taunted and tormented with offers of food, and then also telling them that they're going to be released tomorrow, but they never were. And then to force them to go on stage to fulfill the propaganda campaign of Hamas it's just truly sickening. But the one thing I want to point out, Raj, is the media. The media often talks about wanting equality for Palestinians, and yet we're actually not seeing that in any shape or form. If they want Palestinians to be treated as equals with Israelis, then why do we see 34 hostages being returned for 900 Hamas Palestinian terrorists who have committed crimes, violent murders, who are serving life sentences? There's no equivalency to that. In fact, if the Palestinians wanted to be treated as equals, they should have said, we'll give you all the hostages, which is at this point, 100, including those who have been deceased, their bodies, and we'll just take 100 back. But yet the Palestinians have these greater demands. Now, these hostages have gone through so much. The one thing that I respect about Israel is they don't have a passion for making these people who have already gone through so much endure even more by revealing the specific details of their time in captivity. Israel's goal is for these people to start healing, rebuilding, and restoring the life that was stolen from them. So I don't think we'll ever really get the exact details of what these people have been through, purely because they're horrific. It's uncomfortable to listen to, and it's just not Israel's ethos. Whereas the Palestinians love to share conflict, violence, and they'll talk all day long about what's been happening to their terrorist prisoners while they've been in Israeli jails, because their goal is to vilify Israel. So it's kind of hard because you want Israel to share with the world what's been happening so you can understand, but at the same time, you want to respect those who have come home and just have to start rebuilding their lives.
Well, Nate, I know that you've been to a lot of the locations that Hamas attacked on October 7th, right along the Gaza border in southern Israel, and I know that you have personally talked to a lot of people that were intimately involved in that day, and people that have been released. And is there any story or personal anecdote that you've had since October 7th that reveals maybe the true nature of this whole thing?
Yarden Bibas is a great example of the cruelty and violence of Hamas. He and his family were abducted from Nir Oz, which is a kibbutz probably closest. The kibbutz was probably the most heavily hit by Hamas on October 7th. He was dragged into Gaza on the back of a motorcycle. They ripped his beard. He was separated from his wife and children. He has 2 babies who are still in Gaza, and
And I think that's an important point. Not 12-year-olds, babies.
babies. Yeah, they've had 2 birthdays, I believe now, in the captivity of Gaza. Uh, he came back alone. His wife and his children, we're unsure if they are either alive or if they've been killed. And he came back alone. And Hamas still forced him to go on a stage, hold a certificate, forced to wave for a camera, knowing that his wife and children are still very likely somewhere in Gaza. Those should have been the first people that would have been returned, babies and Yarden's wife, and they haven't. And I actually think it shows the character of Hamas. They claim they've been killed. There's no proof of that. They told Yarden that they've been killed, but we don't know if this is some kind of sick psychological game that they're playing. And that really just sums up, the mantra of Hamas. But I also want to say this: when you go and watch these videos of these hostages being released, there are thousands upon thousands of Gazans who gather, who are cheering, celebrating, laughing, getting their phones out, making content online. There's the 2 twins from Gaza who often make content, and they were making mockery videos about hostages being released. 2 elderly gentlemen and a Agam Burger. And if you're watching this and you can't see the vast difference between the ideology of Hamas and the ethos of the Israelis, you're either spiritually blind or you hold some sort of deep anti-Semitic belief that you want to see Israel as the problem so you can support the Palestinian movement. Because there's no way you can put these 2 groups of people together and put them on any sort of level of some sort of equality. One is purely evil, and one is defending life.
I've known you for a while now, and standing up for Israel and the Jewish people has kind of become your life mission in a lot of ways. And obviously, since October 7th, that's just been multiplied. And we were talking before we got started about just how heavy the past 15 months have been for you. And I think the question has to be asked: why do you keep talking, Nate? Why do you keep doing what you're doing? You've shared with me multiple times just the unending list of death threats that you get just for speaking the truth about this conflict and speaking the truth about October 7th. So, Nate, why do you keep pushing when there's so much pushing back against you?
Because nobody else is, Raj. No leading pastor, no Christian influencer that I've seen has really stepped up and they're willing to do something that's going to cost something. I think about when God said, "Whom shall I send?" And we often think in our Christian journey we're being sent to this glorious mission where there's no cost, or it's all about receiving this praise and honor for the kingdom. But this is the real Christian journey right here. This is supporting Israel is going to cost you something. I get death threats. I've lost hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of potential work, which was what I was doing before October 7th as an actor. But the reason I keep doing it is because no one else will. And my heart breaks for the Jewish identity, because they are a people who have been hated by many and in truth only loved by one. And it's not us. It's not Christians. It's the God of Israel. He's faithfully loved them, and he continues to love them despite the fact that the world has a deep resentment for God choosing them. So for me, I think it's an obligation now to show them what the love of Messiah actually looks like, which is, Jesus says it best. He says, "There's no greater love than laying down your life for a friend." And I consider Israel a friend because, just as Jesus said to the woman at the well, salvation comes from the Jew. You and I are saved because of the Jewish story. And so I want to lay down my life to show them what the love of Messiah actually looks like. And, look, I wish there was more people, Raj. I wish that tomorrow more Christians would stand up and speak up and not give up and not let this Palestinian narrative dictate so much hate and violence towards Jewish people all over the world. But until that happens, I just got to keep doing it. Maybe inspire one or two, to to move up the ranks and, and do what's right, do what's righteous. There's one specific thing in the Bible where God says he hates the wicked. Hates, the word God uses, he hates the wicked, but he also tests the righteous, and he describes the wicked as those who love violence. And I think this is a test for the righteous of this world. I think this is a test for the Christian. Will you stand up against wickedness for those who love violence? If the Palestinians say we love violence and we're going to commit ourselves to jihad, and from the river to the sea, this land will be ours to break and defile the promise that God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, what are you going to do? What's your heart calling you to do? Because if it's to sit back and relax and to be a peacekeeper, then you've missed Jesus's words, because he said, be a peacemaker. And we are trying to make peace with a broken world and a perfect God, but we have to step on some toes to get there, because there's no such thing as an undercover Christian, and there's no such thing as allowing wicked men to succeed against a people who we believe have been promised this land from a Christian point of view. So it's a tough one, Raj.